Hi, good day, everyone. Hello. Let me always go to the comments where I can see. Okay, welcome. If you're joining us on Facebook, welcome. If you're joining us on YouTube, welcome. If you're watching the replay, welcome. Thank you for coming back to watch the replay. Okay, so today, due to last week's 30 minutes of Dyslexia with Lesson, we're talking about prompt hierarchy, and people were asking, so how do you use this when you're working with a child that is older in spelling? Because we looked basically at more of regular types of prompt, when to use them and how to fade them. And some have asked for a practical experience, a practical, excuse me, a practical experience on how you can use this while you're teaching a child how to read. So today, like you all know, is just 30 minutes. So every minute is very, very important. So if you're going to join us, is always important that you join in early so you don't miss any part at all. It's just 30 minutes. So when you're teaching kids how to read or how to spell, one thing that teachers do, I don't know if they do it because, okay, but mostly I think because I'm a teacher, they do it because they are tired. So for instance, a child is reading a word, let's use a story, the fat cat sat on the computer. So the child calls computer wrong, but maybe the fat child, the fat cat sat on the com, compute. Maybe the child says compute. And then the teacher goes computer, as in just corrects the child quickly and says computer. That is a very wrong prompt to use if you want your child to learn how to spell and then in return learn how to read. Thank you so much, Grace, for joining us. Good morning. Thank you for being here. So you want to know exactly what to do, because if you keep correcting and just saying, oh, the right word is computer, believe me, for every time that child read that text, you have to, for every time that child read that text, you would have to correct that child. And like we spoke about prompt, when you're working on prompt, you have the end in mind. And what's the end? The end is that the child will be able to read independently. That is the end you should have in mind. So what should you do? Should you just go right ahead and just correct? No. So the first thing, ensure that if a child gets a word like that wrongly, remember we're using example of a story, the fat cat sat on the computer, and the child is calling the computer wrongly. The first thing you want to do is to ensure that you have taught that word. So has a child learned how to spell the word computer before? The child has to have learned how to spell the word computer before. So for an example is usually when we introduce keys to details. And what's details? Usually details is used for assessment basically, but I also use it to teach kids how to read. And it's basically stories, but then with an assessment sheet on it too. But today we're not talking about debate, so just imagine a debate as any conventional story. So if a student is reading that, the first thing I do is that I don't correct. So if that's my first time of giving that text to that child, as it is, probably with you too, you're introducing a child to a new text. So the first thing you're going to do, you're going to have your paper, you're going to have your pen, and you're just going to listen to the child read. Every word the child gets wrongly, write it down. Remember, you are not correcting yet. And this is an exception. What's the exception? Being that it is the first time you're giving that child that reading material. So no correction. I just listen. I call all the words you're getting wrongly. No, I write down all the words you're getting wrongly. And then when we are done, we go through those words. Remember the first part that spoke about teaching the child the word first. So we're going to go through those words. Um, and of course, in going through those words, it's important that you're great at teaching spelling rules. Because without spelling rules, you're just teaching a child how to cram. Like when you talk about computer, you have an ER sound there, which is a bossy R. You need to understand that so you can explain that to your child. Explain the words, ensure that the child can call the words fluently. Now, sometimes if it's a one-on-one intervention, which it should be for most kids with dyslexia, you realize that that might just be what you would do in that class, probably just going through those words. If you are able to finish it, great. You can now move to the next part. But if you are not able to finish learning those words, or probably by the time you were done learning the words, time was up, the next time you come into class, you want to bring those words out first before you bring the comprehension passage to ensure that the child still remembers. And then you do this next step. So the first step is make sure you have taught how to spell the word. So you can write that down. Make sure you've taught the child how to spell the word. Make sure that you've taught the child that this is how computer is spelled using a structured, no, using spelling rules. So the second thing is you make sure that the child reads the first passage or the first comprehension passage without interrupting. You write the words the child is struggling with. So first, make sure you've taught the word that the child is struggling to spell. And then secondly, ensure that you write down all of those words down. So this number two is going to help you with number one. So if a child is reading the comprehension and I write all of the words down, it means I have done justice to number one. So number one, make sure you have taught that word. If you've not taught the word before, number two, write a list of the words that the child is struggling with as they read. Then the second thing is, now that you've taught this word, you've done number one and number two, and you've done it perfectly well. You can merge number one and two together. Ensure the child knows how to spell that word. Ensure you've taught the child how to spell that word before. So the next thing you want to do is to let the child know that this word they are calling is wrong. Remember, at this third point, you've already gone through the motions of the words with the child. Excuse me. Remember that for this third step that you are doing, you've already explained to the child the spelling rules, how to call these words, and probably the child even called it. But when you're working with kids who have dyslexia, the fact that you taught a thing now doesn't mean that it is here yet. It has not moved to where it is locked in the brain yet. So you might need to help, and that's where prompt comes in. So when they call that word wrong, I thought that computer is broken into three syllables. Computer had explained that the ER is the bossy R, but the child still reads and calls the word wrong. So do I just say, no, that's not compute, that's computer? No. The first question that is going to help me is to tell the child that this word they called is wrong. So, because sometimes they don't even realize that they called the word wrongly. Okay, so I want to let the child know that this word you called is wrongly. Okay, so let them know they didn't get the word correctly. Okay, so the first thing, let them know that they didn't get the word correctly. So if a child says compute, I want to say no, the compute is not correct. You didn't get that word correctly. So sometimes when they look at it, they are able to say, oh, okay, computer. So if you show that you explain to the child that this word you didn't spell it correctly and they still are not getting it correctly, then you move to the next thing. Remember the paper where you taught them how to read that word? You can go back to that paper and explain that. See, this word is the word that we were working together on. All right. this word is a word we're working together on, and you didn't get this word correctly. And let them see how you were able to break this word into different syllables. That might help them to remember that, oh, okay, this was how I learned this word. This was how this word was broken into syllables. So that might bring the word back again. So are you getting it so far? So first we said make sure it's a word you have taught. And if it's a word you have not taught, as a child reads the comprehension passage, list out all of the words that the child is not getting correctly, and then teach them how to spell those words using spelling rules. And then secondly, let them know that they didn't call the word correctly. So if a child says, the fat cat sat on the compute, you pause a while, say, hold on, can you call that word again? They say compute. Say, no, that is not compute. Look deeper and try to figure out the word. If the child can't figure out the word, then the next thing, you want to go back to that paper where you taught that child how to spell that word. If you can't find the paper, it's important you find the paper. If you can't find the paper, then it means that you have to break the word again into whatever way you broke initially. Okay? So show them where you worked the word out. And then the next thing is break the word into syllables. So usually for me, the same paper where we worked on the word, that word will probably be broken into syllables because that helps. It helps in learning how to spell. It helps a child in learning how to spell. So they break the word into different syllables. So computer, let's break that word into different syllables. Computer. You get it right? So write com, pu, and ter. So you can see how the word is broken. I wish I was writing on my screen. So I love Zoom. So it is broken into syllables. So I make them look at it. Let me write in such a way that you can see. Can you see? Okay, I'm writing with a pencil. So computer. So at this point in time, I've not told them that this is computer yet. I've only broken the word into syllables and they can see. So for a child who is great at three-letter words, looking at this, they should be able to call the word computer. Okay. And it's really important that when we're teaching kids how to spell, you use syllables because it helps them remember. For children with dyslexia, it helps them remember. Because when my child is struggling with a word, the first thing I want to say is, okay, break that word into syllables. Thank you, Grace. Thank you so much, Grace. If they are able to break that word into syllable, and then we go to the next part of write each syllable as you're pronouncing it. So you can see the hierarchy we are moving, right? Can you remember the hierarchy we are moving? Let me take that again. So first, make sure you have taught that word before. If you've not taught that word before, then the comprehension passage that the child is going to read, allow the child to read through the comprehension passage, and then note all the words the child is getting wrong. Remember, don't correct. You're not, the child is not reading at that point in time to correct. You must always know your goal and have a goal when you're teaching a child. So your goal at that point is to get the words that the child is struggling with. Okay? So you get down all of the words and then you teach them. You have taught the child how to spell the word. So the next thing is, even after teaching the child how to spell this word, if they're still getting it wrongly when they are reading, when they get to that word that they called wrongly, you want to let them pause. Hold on for a bit and let them know that this word, you didn't call it correctly. I've noticed that for some of my kids, when I call their attention back, they are able to critically look at the word and then call it correctly. So if that child is still not able to call the word correctly, remember that book where you taught them how to spell the word. You go back there and you let them see that this is the word we're working on. If you don't have that book, maybe it's missing, then you can write the words in syllables. Remember, I'm assuming that when you first taught the word, you taught that word and you also included syllables because that really helps and should be a core part of you teaching kids how to spell. So just like Grace has shown us there, you break the word into syllables and then you let the child spell it again. At that point in time, most of the kids should be able to spell the word correctly after seeing the syllables, especially if it's a child that already knows three-letter words. And I'm expecting that if a child can say the fat cat sat on the computer and computer is a problem there, it means that to an extent, the child can call their two-letter words and their three-letter words. So you've gotten to that part and you've written the word in syllables, but the child is still not getting it. It means you will now have to break it. Remember the first one, I didn't say the word in syllables. I only wrote it down in syllables. And the child, so now I'm going to try saying it in syllables. Computer. You can see that I've tried saying it in syllables. Now it's the turn for that child to write that word in syllables. We've broken it into syllables now. So you write it. You can see that at this point where I'm telling the child that this word is computer, I'm not just saying it is computer. I'm taking it a step further again. Now that it is computer, you break it into syllables and write it. If the child is able to break it into syllables on their own and write it, great. The child can then call it again and then you can go back to what you were reading. But if the child is unable to still break that word down, believe me, if the child is unable to break that word down, it means that the child just crammed the computer you said. So it is really not advisable that you go back to reading when the child is unable to write the syllable of that word down. It means the child just crammed what you said. And you want to ensure that the child understands what you said and understand these words you have said, this spelling, this word you have called out so that they can spell it. So they must write it. Come. And believe me, this what I've said here is just about 15 minutes. But then this can take time. So come, okay, your three-letter word come, let's go. And then pew, and then remember, spelling rules are very important here. So at that point in time, you have tried your best. The child is still not able to break that word down. You have to now start explaining what that word is. So what is a computer? You need to show pictures of what a computer is. This is a computer. This is what a computer looks like. Now you might be wondering, why is that important? That is going to help you as you begin teaching that word again, because after this point, you have to start all over again. You remember when we're talking about prompt hierarchy? I think I still have that here. So you can see we talked about full physical prompts, but most of these prompts here are basically work best when you're helping a child write. Modeling, full verbal prompt, partial verbal prompt, visual. So you can see that I'm using some prompts here, but not all. A visual prompt is a prompt where I show the child what the computer is. It's a prompt where I show the child where the word was broken in. An auditory prompt is that prompt where I have now called out the word and it is time for the child to break the word down on the paper on themselves. So you can see for reading, you don't necessarily exhaust all of the prompts that are there. Even for any other thing you're teaching, you don't always exhaust all of the prompts that are there. You basically just pick some that are beneficial to you and your students and you use them. And we also mentioned last week that always use the least amount of prompt when necessary. And that's what we're saying as we're going through the prompts that helps your child spell, which in turn helps your child to read. So if a child is getting a word wrong and I quickly just step in and say that this word is computer, it means I am not applying the least amount of prompt at that time. So the least amount of prompt, like I mentioned earlier, if you're working on spelling, is telling the child to look at that word again, that they got that word wrong. So that is a prompt on their own. This word is not correct. Can you look at it again? And this is where I was coming to, where we're talking about the least intrusive to most intrusive. The least, and then the most intrusive to the least intrusive. So do we have anybody here who was in last week's class? So just wave your hands with an emoji if we're uh, in the last session we had on 30 minutes of dyslexia with lesson. If you weren't, please make sure you watch the replay. Okay, the replay is still on YouTube. The replay is still on Dyslexia Help Africa. So ensure you watch it. Watching it will help you understand this more. So now I'm showing them the picture of a computer. Now you might be wondering, why is that necessary? For a child with dyslexia, that's very important because it is going to stick. Usually when they can connect picture to words is better. And that's why, if you've noticed, a child with dyslexia can spell a word like elephant. You know, that's a long word, right? Okay, that's okay. Thank you, Dushma. Yes, I saw you in the last class. So a child can spell a long word like elephant, and then it's unable to spell a very short word like was, W-A-S, W-A-S. So you're wondering, the elephant is longer than was. So what's the problem? The problem there is that visually they can picture an elephant, so it connects more to the spelling. But they can't picture was. Can somebody tell us what was look like? W-A-S. So, Grace, Mr. Shima, can you define was? What does was look like? Is was big? At least I can say an elephant is big. It has a trunk. How about was? Is was big? What does it look like? So it becomes very hard for them to connect that to spelling. So it's important that probably your child is struggling with this because they are finding it hard to picture what a computer is. And you will be surprised that sometimes these kids don't know. Okay, I was working with a child yesterday and I was showing her an animal. What was the name of that? It was a very irregular animal that someone should know. I was surprised that she didn't know. So I can be telling that child to spell that word. I'm thinking that, oh, that child already knows that animal, but they don't know that animal. So it is more of abstract. Exactly, Grace. Most kids with dyslexia spell was as W-O-S. And when I was teaching a student sight words, that's where was fall in. The child said was, who asked. And for me, that was even good because I applauded him that, wow, that is great. It means to an extent you understand how to break your words into syllables. But then this is a sight word. So you just need to know that this is was. And getting that into their head sometimes can be quite a lot of work because no matter how we always corrected, this child would always write WAS as W was. So in that case, what you want to do is just to ensure that you have those words in the classroom, you have words right on the child's desk where they can always see it. You give homeworks on it. You just have to ensure that that child is relating with that word every day. And before you know it, it will stick. So, as I round up for today, let the child see the picture of what you are talking about because it will help stick. I love to give an example, and I love to say, for instance, a child who is struggling with reading, we can relate that to a child who is drowning. Usually, when you're drowning, you're looking for what to hold your hands on. So, if someone throws you a life jacket, you're going to use that and you're going to come up. So let's imagine a child with dyslexia is struggling in a river of words. They are unable to realize or spell a particular word. you need to give them that life jacket that will help. And that life jacket that helps most of the times is the pictures they have of that thing they are trying to spell. Like in our case today, we are looking at computer. So after you've shown the picture of the computer, you go back again to the first prompt. And the first prompt is what? How to spell the word computer. You're going to explain again. K, O, M, com. Pew, your P, and your long vowel, U, your T, and your bossy R, air. So it means your child needs to understand what bossy R is. So there has to be a foundational structure before you start all of this. And then after that, you go back again to them reading that passage. If they are not able to read it well, if they're not able to call the word well, you let them know that they didn't call this word correctly. If they still can't get it, you go back again and show them where you worked on the word. If they still were not able to get that, then you break the word into syllables and tell them to call it. If they are still unable to call that word as you have broken it into syllables, you now call the word. Remember, you cover what you did. You now call the word and you tell them to write the word down. So I'm now calling the word computer. You now write it in syllables. Computer. If the child is still unable to spell that word, then I give cues again with a picture. So you can see how the circle goes on and on. But you want to ensure that if you've done that like twice and the child is still not getting it, you need to try alternative ways. And it could be that aside just writing the words down, you have blocks that they can manipulate. Maybe this is a C, this is an O, a M, build magnetic blocks where they can manipulate. You teach the same thing, but in different ways. You can also have an audio on that. You can also have somebody holding it. So you now have to, that's where creativity comes in for you as a dyslexia teacher, because you have to look for different ways, excuse me, you have to look for different ways to teach that same thing. So did you get value? Because we have just 1 minute to go. And remember, each time the 30 minutes of dyslexia is going on, you can always drop your questions. Okay, allow the child to be done reading before you correct. Yes, Grace mentioned that. Remember, that's when you're looking at the second part of the reading. In other subsequent parts, immediately the child gets a wrong word, you pause the child right there. Okay, you pause the child right there and you tell them that this word they just pronounced was wrongly. So the first reading, they read without you correcting and you write the words they are struggling with. But in subsequent reading, you stop them immediately they say a wrong word, you call their attention to it. Okay. They also want to write it like computer. They also want to write what? Like the word, eh? Okay, so thank you so much for today. Thank you for everyone who was here. I can't see everyone who is online, but I can. Okay, Doshima is watching from YouTube. I can see Doshima from YouTube. I can see. Yes, exactly. They will also want to write like computer with that AR. So that's why they need to understand the spelling rules. Okay, that might sound as tar, but the bossy R-E-R sometimes gives you that sound, tar. So they need to understand this. And understanding that is also one of the life jackets that you throw out at them when they are drowning in the river of inability to spell. Okay, so that's it for today. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Grace. Thank you, Doshima. Thank you for every other person who joined but didn't comment. So if there are no questions, this is me saying goodbye. And if there are questions, please feel free to always drop them here and I will respond to them duly, okay? And then, where is this book? Okay, and don't forget to get your Dyslexia Bible. You should get this book before the year runs out. This book is loaded. Thank God Doshima is here. She has this book. So it's not just me speaking. She has been on chapter 3 for a very, very long time because you just have to download it, download the book. And also don't forget to order for your There Are No Limits t-shirts. Like we say, that's not just a t-shirt, but that's a movement. As you carry that t-shirt around, you're letting people know that every child can learn. And you'll be surprised at the number of people that might reach out to you just because they are seeing you on that shirt. A lot of parents are struggling with their kids' inability to learn or inability to read. And as they see it, they want to ask you questions. As they see it, it might encourage someone. So beyond this shirt, it is a movement. Join the movement. You can just let us know if you're interested in having any of those shirts down in the comment section, and we will reach out to you. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day. Thank you, Favor Chanson. I see you. Bye.